Hearing the young man's declaration, the eye patch leader let out a snort of contempt. Buffed. The surrounding bandits also burst into laughter, holding their stomachs as they mocked their prey's naivety. They pointed their swords at him, sneering. This lunatic's talking like he's some kind of wizard. A subordinate chimed in, laughing gleefully. For real, boss. Ignoring their mockery, Turan calmly swiped his hand through the air. Wind, he softly cast. Instantly, a powerful cyclone swirled around him, throwing the burly bandits into the air in sheer terror. Screams of Yuwa echoed through the canyon. The young wizard silently concluded his teacher's lesson. So instead of just generating wind out of thin air, shaping it with my hand and amplifying it uses far less mana. The bandits tumbled onto the sand, groaning in pain and absolute panic. What the hell? Turan stood there, looking as relaxed as if nothing had happened. He unhooked the water flask from his hip, pouring a small stream of water into his hand. He marveled at his own strength. I didn't know I could whip up wind this strong with so little mana. Under the control of his magic, the water quickly froze, condensing into a sharp ice crystal radiating cold air. The bandit's eyes widened in horror as the ice spear zoomed toward him. The ice crystal shot right through the man's arm, blood splattering as he screamed in agony. Kook! Turan raised his hand, continuing to create other small, floating ice bullets, his face showing a hint of disappointment as he evaluated the technique. Wasn't this supposed to be a spell that's useful when there's a lot of water nearby? Honestly, just throwing stones feels faster and stronger. Faced with overwhelming power, extreme fear engulfed the bandits. The eye patch leader hastily groveled on the sand, tossing his weapon aside and cowardly begging, We didn't know you were a wizard. Please just forgive us this once. The other subordinates also kowtowed, trembling and crying out, We'll give you anything you want, so please, just spare our lives. However, Turan simply turned his back, coldly walking away, paying no mind to their pitiful pleas. As the eye patch leader looked up, a horrifying scene struck his eyes. He turned pale, stammering in despair. Impossible. They're all dead. Behind Turan, massive black shadows erupted from the ground like sharp spikes, impaling the bodies of all his subordinates. The young wizard stood silently amidst the blood-soaked wasteland, exuding an incredibly terrifying aura. Turan stood before the kneeling leader, his voice calm. Let me ask you one thing. The eye patch man replied in a panic. Why yes, wizard. I'll answer anything. Turan glanced down at him. Why did you attack me without a plan? If I'm a traveler walking alone, I could be a wizard just like now. The bandit trembled as he explained. Because you bowed your head. Turan was surprised. What? The man continued. Even when we spoke to you rudely, you bowed and greeted us. So we assumed you were an ordinary person. Turan smiled softly, taking it as a valuable lesson about the cruelty of the outside world. Thanks. That taught me something useful. Seeing the young man smile, the leader rejoiced with a glimmer of hope for survival. Will you really spare me? But answering him was only a small water bubble condensing in the air. In Turan's mind, the instructions of his old benefactor echoed again. Turan, the image of the knight Kiorn appeared clearly in his memory. From now on, you're going to meet a lot of people, and there's something I absolutely want to tell you. Never show mercy to scum like bandits. The kind who don't hesitate to harm others to profit. The reason I'm saying this so firmly is. Returning to reality, Turan's eyes grew cold and resolute. I think I understand the reason, because a life I spare out of pity could end up harming 10 good people. The flashback of the fierce battle ended, and the cruel reality of the wasteland pulled Turan back. The corpses of the bandits lay scattered on the cold sand. Turan briefly glanced at those who died by his hands, his tone indifferent and devoid of emotion. I've stalled long enough. He decisively turned his back and walked away. The narrative text echoed silently. The road the merchants turned bandits dragged their cart along, those clear wool tracks cutting across the sand. He trudged forward, leaving footprints imprinted on the red sand. Left one thought burned sharply into Turan's mind. I killed people. The young man's eyes showed a hint of contemplation. Although a slight feeling of guilt crept in, his reason told him he couldn't just let them go. The face of the eye patch leader flashed as a reminder. He realized this was necessary, because Kiorn's warning came back to him. The benefactor's teaching echoed clearly. People who could decide, without hesitation, to rob and kill for profit would target others again at any time. Standing at the boundary between the desert sand and the green prairie, Turan's steps became firmer. Like wool tracks in the desert slowly fading as weeds grow over them, Turan's chaotic heart gradually settled as he recalled Kiorn's teaching. The young man looked up at the vast blue sky, ready for his new journey. And then, he arrived in a new world. Crossing the rolling hills, Turan's eyes widened in amazement at the bustling scenes sprawling in the valley below. Wow, so that's the place. His whisper was caught in the rustling wind. At the foot of the hill was the small city Muriai, with castles and tiled roofs packed closely together. The sight of the busy streets filled with people left him in awe. This is my first time seeing so many people crowding around. Stepping into the center of Muriai, Turan was overwhelmed by the bustling, lively sounds of the streets. He curiously watched the busy stalls and the bustling crowd passing by. Even the architecture is completely different from the village, he thought to himself as he looked up at a majestic stone tower piercing the sky. Blending into the dense crowd, the young man smiled and marveled. Now it really feels like I've come to a city. Turan approached a colorful fruit stand by the road and politely spoke up. Excuse me. The vendor greeted him enthusiastically. Oh, welcome. What can I get you? The youth waved his hand honestly. Ah, I'm not a customer. In his mind, he recalled Kiorn's advice. If you reach a city and need a place to rest, look for an inn. No matter the village or city, there's usually an inn. Before he could ask for directions, the vendor did a 180-degree attitude flip, yelling and shooing him away. If you're not buying fruit, get lost. Shooed away mercilessly, Turan stepped back with a bewildered expression, muttering to himself. Why is he acting that rude? Is it some unspoken rule in cities that you have to buy fruit before you ask questions? Deciding to play along, he pointed at a basket of red apples. How much is this? The vendor curtly replied, 2 dupit. Turan opened his coin pouch, mumbling his unfamiliarity with the new currency. 2 dupit. Seeing his hesitation, the fruit vendor added, You look like an outsider, so you probably don't know what that is. Paying with other coins is fine too. Turan took out a silver coin and handed it to the vendor, taking the opportunity to ask, Where can I find the inn? Receiving the money, his attitude changed instantly, giving enthusiastic directions. Go straight down the road behind the cape shop, then turn left. You'll see it with a blue roof. That place is the biggest inn in the city. Following the directions, Turan stood before a large wooden sign reading Pub and INN. Stepping inside, he was welcomed by a pretty blonde girl with an attractive figure and a radiant smile. Welcome to our inn. A name tag appeared. In staff Lena. She playfully flirted. You're a handsome guest. Ignoring the compliment, Turan got straight to the point. How much for a night? The innkeeper Lena kept her bright smile, answering briefly, 16 dupit. The young man nodded in agreement. I'll stay. While pulling out a small coin pouch, his eyes became more serious. More importantly, there's something I want to ask. Lena was curious as she took the jingling pouch. Something you want to ask? Turan leaned in, lowering his voice. Is there a monster nearby with a bounty on it? Hearing that word, Lena's expression showed a hint of shock. A monster? In his mind, Turan clearly defined the goal of his journey. I need to kill monsters and absorb their mana, and he said hunting monsters would earn money too. Waiting a moment without a reply, he frowned slightly, prompting her. Why aren't you answering? Lena bowed her head slightly and smiled. Her cheeks flushed, but her fingers expertly flicked the coin he had just given her. She looked up at the young man with the knowing smile of a city dweller. Sir, there's no such thing as free in this world. Faced with the innkeeper Lena's vague attitude, Turan repeated an unfamiliar word in confusion. City Hall? He had never heard of this concept during his entire life on the mountain. Seeing the young guest look flustered, Lena leaned against the bar, flashing a teasing smile as she suddenly asked, You don't know about city halls? At Turan's embarrassed expression, she giggled, amused by the boy's innocence. Wow, you really are from the countryside. After laughing, she kindly explained, City halls are where they handle various public affairs. The officials who work there are employed by the city's lord. Lena glanced out the window, where darkness had gradually enveloped the city, then turned back to remind Turan. It's probably closed since the sun's already down. If you want to find a monster bounty, go to City Hall tomorrow. She stepped out from behind the bar, approaching the young man sitting alone at the wooden table, and asked curiously, "So, are you a monster hunter too?" Turan looked up at her in surprise, another new concept appearing. What's a monster hunter? The scene of a brave man standing before the corpse of a giant beast radiating green mana appeared in Lena's tale. People say that if an ordinary person hunts monsters, they become a wizard. You want to become a wizard too, don't you? But right after, a burly man slammed his hand on the table, bursting into laughter and cutting her off. Of course, anyone who believes that kind of superstition is an idiot. Turan frowned slightly, repeating the word the man had just said. Superstition? The burly man, with the physique of a seasoned warrior, stepped up and patted Turan's shoulder, confidently asserting, "It's a real fact that you can become a wizard by killing monsters." He proudly introduced himself, Monster Hunter Midden. I saw it with my own eyes. Hearing the familiar voice, another man drinking beer turned around in astonishment. Midden, you're alive. The whole inn buzzed at his appearance. Midden laughed heartily, replying loudly, I told you, I'm not dying until I become a wizard. In his excitement, he accidentally knocked his hand against Turan's head. He quickly pulled his hand back, laughing off an apology. Oh, excuse me. Ignoring the minor incident, Turan stood up, his eyes lighting up with special interest in what Midden had just said. More importantly, could I hear more about what you just said? The part where you can become a wizard by killing monsters. Lena rested her chin on her hand, adding to the explanation. Wizards get stronger when they hunt monsters. By the same principle, if an ordinary person kills a monster, they can become a wizard. Midden threw his arm around some of his companions, proudly boasting. The four of us are hunting monsters to become wizards. His teammates nodded eagerly in agreement. Yes, yes. Analyzing the information he just received, Turan came to a silent conclusion. Then does that mean someone among you is already a wizard? Midden quickly waved his hand in denial. No way. In this city, there are only the Lord's wizard and 3 under him. Turan wondered. But you said you hunt monsters. The hunter glared at Turan's simple attire, suspiciously asking. For that, your gear's way too shabby. Don't you have a weapon? Turan calmly pulled a leather strap from his clothes. I do. Midden laughed in surprise when he saw the item. Oh, a sling? Judging by how worn it is, you've used it a lot. Turan nodded in confirmation. That I have. It's good for firing something about the size of an egg quickly. Midden rubbed his chin, evaluating. With that, you could easily hunt rabbit or fox monsters. Seeing that Turan had some skill, Midden excitedly extended an invitation. Actually, we were just saying we wished we had one more shooter. Any interest in hunting with us? Turan smiled gently, but firmly declined. No, thank you though. He thought to himself as he returned to his room. There's no reason I have to hunt together with them. Lying on the soft bed under the dim yellow light, Turan breathed a sigh of relief after a long, exhausting day. What a chaotic day. He closed his eyes, but thoughts kept swirling in the young wizard's mind. Looking at his belongings neatly packed on the table, Turan was still amazed. I still can't believe I actually left the village. He reached out his hand, releasing a brilliant blue stream of mana, admiring the newfound power flowing through his veins. He wondered about the future ahead. What's going to happen from here on? Suddenly, a knock on the door. Knock, knock, shattered the silence. Turan's eyes instantly grew wary, and he turned to look at the door. Who is it? He thought to himself, not forgetting his teacher's warning. Even at an inn, I shouldn't let my guard down? The teaching of the old knight Kiorn vividly returned to Turan's mind from when they were still traveling together. That's right. A city isn't automatically safe. He looked at him with a stern, experienced face. So, never let your guard down. At that time, Turan obediently nodded. Understood. Back in reality, standing before the closed door, Turan channeled his mana, enveloping his body in a perfect invisible disguise. He quietly approached the door, ready to deal with any unexpected situation. The door slowly opened with a click. Turan stood hidden in the shadows, his sharp eyes observing the person entering. But the person who appeared was Lena, the innkeeper with the sweet smile from earlier. Turan was completely surprised, softly calling her name. Lena? Seeing the room seemingly empty, Lena asked in confusion, "Were you asleep?" Not waiting long, Turan dispelled his invisibility, appearing before her. Lena was startled to see him suddenly appear, her face flushed as she shyly explained her reason for visiting so late at night. "I thought the room might be cold, so I came to keep you warm." Turan, clueless about her implication, naively asked back, "What? What do you mean by that?" Lena gently tugged at the hem of her blouse, her coy, seductive smile making the atmosphere in the small room incredibly suggestive.